Well, hey, Dave DeBow here. Welcome back. Today we're talking about how to buy multiple investment properties. Why? Because if you want to create true financial freedom through real estate, you need more than one property. All right, in today's video, we're going to talk about 5 different ways to buy multiple investment properties and one hot tip for getting investors on board. So let's jump in. All right, so the first way to buy multiple investment properties is the way most of us think about, at least early on in the day, and that is saving up our own money to come up with the money for the down payments, closing costs, etc., and buying another property, and then saving up or creating some equity and refinancing a certain property and buying another property. So in other words, self-financing and buying more properties, multiple properties over time. Nothing wrong with that, it's just a slow go. The second way is kind of a variation on that. Instead of saving up the money for the next down payment, we wait for our mortgage to get paid down on a certain property and the value of the property to go up over time with regular market appreciation to create more equity in that property. And then we refinance it, pull part of the equity out of that one deal in order to buy the next property. So again, that's another way of self-financing, but instead of working extra hours, working overtime and saving up, you're letting your properties buy the next properties for you. All right, the third way to buy multiple investment properties is to get creative. So back in the day when I first got into real estate investing, I did a whole bunch of deals in a pretty short period of time by being creative about it. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't very smart and I sold most of them instead of holding on to them, but it is a very good way to buy multiple properties. You find motivated sellers who have challenging situations, perhaps challenging properties, and you offer them creative solutions. What does a creative solution look like? Well, it could be getting an option to purchase the property and then selling it to another person. You're not really holding on to it long term. It could be that you buy a property subject to the underlying financing. So you're able to buy that property, but the mortgage stays in the other person's name and you just make the payments on that. That's another creative way as well. So there are all sorts of different creative ways. I'll put a link to a video that I shot a little while ago about different creative strategies, and you can check that out as well. The fourth way to buy multiple properties is to joint venture with other people. What does that mean? That means that you bring the skill set, you bring the deals, you bring the team, you bring the knowledge to the table, and you find a joint venture partner who brings capital and perhaps credit to the table. You join forces and you do deals that way. So typically this is quite often done with single family homes. You'll buy a property and you get your joint venture partner to put in the capital for the down payment, the closing costs, put up their credit for getting qualified for financing, and you guys both are on title on that property. So that's a joint venture. And then you do a different joint venture for the next property, the next property, the next property. Massive leverage because you don't have to come up with your own money or your own credit, and the sky's your limit. As many joint venture partners as you find are as many deals as you can do. Joint venture partnerships tend to work really, really well with single family homes and smaller multifamily properties. Any kind of property that you can get into with one investor and their capital. And the fifth way to buy multiple investment properties is once you're really starting to scale things up, is to start to syndicate. And that means that you're getting a whole bunch of investors on board, typically with smaller amounts of money, and you're pooling that money together to buy a property. And this tends to be for larger properties. So a lot of people that are in the multifamily space, buying big apartment buildings, are focusing on syndications. Makes a lot of sense. However, you need to be very, very careful when you're pooling people's money that you don't cross the line with the Securities and Exchange Commission in the States, the provincial securities regulators in Canada. You want to make sure that you do it legally and everything is done above board. The challenge with that is it tends to be quite expensive and cumbersome to get everything set up and go through the whole process of getting permission to do that kind of stuff. However, once you get it set up, then the sky is your limit. All right, I told you I'd give you a hot tip on bringing on investors so that you can buy multiple investment properties. And here it is. A lot of people, when they're talking to a potential joint venture partner or potential investor, they're trying to get that person to cut them a check right away. And I'm going to recommend that you be a little bit patient. Do it a different way. So here's what we show our clients to do. Instead of going for the throat directly, what we do is we start raising capital. We start getting our investors lined up, what I like to call get your investor ducks in a row, before you've actually got a deal to offer them. And what does that look like? That looks like this. You're getting investor meetings, you're talking with people about your deals, you're showing them a case study, you're showing them an example of the kind of deals that you do, and then you're getting them to sign off on an expression of interest. What is an expression of interest? Just like it says, they're expressing their interest in investing in a deal with you. It's not a legally binding document, but by the fact of them signing off on that, saying something like, I, Joe Schmo, am ready, willing, and able to invest a sum of up to $150,000 with Dave Dubois in a multifamily investment deal if he finds me one sometime in the next 6 months. And then Joe Schmo signs off on that, and we date it. I sign off on that. He gets a copy. I get a copy. The chances of Joe actually doing the deal rise exponentially compared to if Joe just says, hey, Dave, yeah, this looks good. Let me know the next time you've got a deal. So that is the whole goal. Let's get a whole bunch of Joes signed off on those expressions of interest. And then my big tip is always get more money lined up than you think you need, because when you need it and the smoke clears, you'll probably have enough. So for example, if I'm looking at doing small multifamily properties and I need an average of $500,000 to do a deal, then I'm going to try and have $700, $800, $900, maybe $1 million in expressions of interest lined up first, and then go looking for the property, because I know that when I've got that deal, now instead of having to go out to everybody and anybody, I can laser focus on that small group of people. And it's kind of like first come, first serve. I've got this great deal. I need to raise $500,000 for it. I've got $1 million lined up. It's first come, first serve. And you can create a little bit of scarcity there, a little bit of supply and demand on that side as well. So that's my big tip for you. So one of my favorite stories on how to buy multiple investment properties is our client Craig. And when I first met Craig, he had a few single family type properties on the go that he had saved up the money for. He'd self-financed, he got that going. He'd started to raise a little bit of capital, do a few joint venture deals with people, but he was really, really struggling with getting investors' attention. He really didn't like the idea of networking and schmoozing and dialing for dollars. He tried it, didn't work very well for him. So we started working with Craig, and we got it to the point where we really laser focused on a specific group of people, generated interest, and instead of Craig chasing after them, they started coming to Craig. At the beginning, it was 1 or 2 investors in the first couple of months, but then it started to snowball. And then it really started to pick up speed. And within a year, Craig went from chasing after the money to having the money chasing after him. And he blew up his portfolio of single family homes. You can do the same thing if you know how to tap into other people's money. Now, speaking of tapping into other people's money, if you'd like to learn more about what Craig did and how we can create a process of attracting investors instead of chasing them, then go ahead and get my book. It's called Money Partner Formula. There's a link in the description below, or you can go to the website investorattractionbook.com. Get your copy today.